The story begins in a small town in America, where a series of bizarre murders has been making headlines for quite some time. The killers aren't driven by revenge or personal grudges. They simply enjoyed terrifying innocent people before brutally taking their lives. And our main character, Maya, is one of the unfortunate victims who somehow managed to survive the very first attack. Now, Maya slowly regains consciousness in a hospital room. A nurse is standing right in front of her. Panicked, Maya immediately asks about her boyfriend. But the moment she hears the doctor's response, her entire world falls apart. He couldn't survive because he had lost too much blood. Hearing this completely shatters Maya. Tears stream down her face without stopping. Even without many dialogues, the film portrays her grief so powerfully that the audience can genuinely feel her pain. A little later, a police officer and the sheriff question Maya about everything that happened that night. She explains that there were 3 masked killers. One wore a burlap sack over his head, another had a creepy doll face mask, and the third was a girl with a horrifying permanent smile. The most terrifying part was that they had no motive at all. They simply enjoyed frightening and torturing people before killing them. For the police, the case feels like a nightmare. No evidence, no identities, nothing but fear and death. After thinking for a moment, Maya suddenly remembers that the attackers kept asking about someone named Tamara. But before she can say anything else, the nurse interrupts the conversation and brings it to an end. The sheriff reassures Maya that the criminals will be caught soon before leaving the hospital. That same night, the sheriff and his partner stop at a small restaurant for dinner. While they're eating, the restaurant owner casually asks who murdered the young couple. Without giving it much thought, the officer replies that the girl is actually still alive and recovering in the hospital. The instant those words leave his mouth, an eerie silence spreads across the entire restaurant. Everyone suddenly turns to stare at them. But the most unsettling person in the room is a young woman quietly eating a slice of chocolate cake while staring at them without blinking. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Maya sits alone remembering the happy moments she shared with her boyfriend. They once played the piano together, never realizing that it would become their final memory. Just then, the nurse enters the room and gives Maya her medication. Seizing the opportunity, Maya quietly asks, "Who is Tara?" Instead of giving a straight answer, the nurse simply says she's only heard terrifying stories about her. Afterward, the nurse steps outside to make a phone call. Heavy rain is pouring down, and the atmosphere is so unsettling that everything feels like a warning of something terrible about to happen. Then suddenly, bloody handprints appear on the glass of the phone booth, and the nurse is nowhere to be seen. At the same time, Maya jolts awake from a horrifying nightmare. Just then, the phone in her hospital room begins to ring. Maya answers the call, and a single question comes from the other end. "Where's Tamara?" The moment she hears it, her hands begin to tremble. She immediately hangs up the phone. But just seconds later, a horrifying scream echoes from outside. It sounds like someone is being hacked apart with an axe. That's when Maya realizes the killers have returned. Despite being in severe pain, she forces herself out of her hospital room to save her life. But the moment she steps into the hallway, the sight in front of her leaves her frozen in shock. The entire hospital is completely deserted. No doctors, no nurses, just absolute silence. Maya rushes toward the emergency exit, but when she gets there, she discovers the door has been locked from the outside. Then, without warning, the hospital's power suddenly goes out. The only light left comes from the red emergency lamps, casting an eerie glow that makes the place feel even more terrifying. Desperate for help, Maya pulls out her phone. But just like in every horror movie, it refuses to work. And that's when the real nightmare begins. Her phone is completely dead. No signal, no help. And death is waiting for her somewhere in the darkness. Even through her fear, Maya gathers the courage to search the hospital for another way out. But suddenly, in the pitch-black corridor, she spots the same masked killer holding an axe. Panicked, Maya turns and runs, desperately looking for a place to hide. But the killer seems to be watching her every move. Barely escaping with her life, she slips into a machine room. Covering her mouth with her hand, she tries to stay completely silent. But the terror is so overwhelming that her entire body starts shaking uncontrollably. Then, by accident, she makes a small noise. The killer instantly figures out where she's hiding. Just as he's about to enter the room, Maya grabs a nearby gas cylinder and hurls it at him. For a few precious seconds, his attention is diverted. And Maya uses that brief moment to make another desperate escape. She races through the dark hospital corridors until she finally ends up inside the morgue. But what she sees there nearly stops her heart. Her boyfriend's dead body is lying on one of the tables. With nowhere else to hide, she climbs inside the same body drawer holding her boyfriend's corpse. Meanwhile, the killer slowly enters the morgue and begins inspecting every single body. One by one, he opens each locker to check inside. Hidden in the drawer, Maya trembles in fear. Only a thin sheet of metal separates her from the killer, and it feels like she's about to be discovered at any second. Then suddenly, a hospital worker walks in. The poor man becomes the killer's next victim, but his sacrifice unknowingly saves Maya's life. While the killer is distracted, Maya quietly pushes open the locker and escapes. After running for what feels like forever, she finally reaches an isolated farmhouse. Outside, she spots an old pickup truck. She quickly jumps inside and tries to start the engine, but the keys are missing. With no other choice, she enters the farmhouse to search for them. Just as she finally finds the keys, the farmhouse owner suddenly appears behind her, aiming a shotgun straight at her. He mistakes Maya for a thief. Raising both hands in surrender, Maya desperately screams, "Please, call the police!" But the farmer gives a strange response. There's no need to call the police. And just then, the killer wearing the pink mask suddenly appears from behind him. Maya immediately grabs the gun lying on the ground, but bad luck. It's completely out of bullets. At that exact moment, the sack mask killer also arrives. Without wasting a second, Maya runs and hides underneath the table. Outside, the masked killer is roaming around with a knife in hand, while Maya has nothing but a small metal fork to defend herself. Fighting for her life, she waits for the perfect opportunity and suddenly strikes. But she fails to take the killer down because another masked attacker barges in at the same moment. Maya tries to escape, but the instant she gets outside, she comes face to face with a third masked killer, the terrifying doll face mask. Now she's completely surrounded. As a last resort, Maya locks herself inside the bathroom. But from the other side, an axe keeps slamming into the door over and over, making it feel like death is only seconds away. Maya screams with all her strength. Finally, she notices a nearby window open. Just before the door shatters, she somehow manages to jump out through the window. Outside, heavy rain is pouring down. Without looking back, she sprints deep into the forest. Darkness surrounds her from every direction. The ground is soaked with mud, and the only sound echoing through the night is her desperate breathing. Then, in the distance, a pair of headlights cuts through the rain and starts moving toward her. Maya rushes onto the road, desperately waving for help. The car comes to a stop, but when she sees the person behind the wheel, she's stunned. It's the hospital nurse. Despite her fear, Maya gets into the car. But in the very next moment, the nurse suddenly locks all the doors. The instant Maya hears the locks click, she goes into full panic mode. She's convinced the nurse might be working with the killers. She starts screaming at the top of her lungs, "Open the door!" The nurse tries to calm her down, explaining that she only wants to help and safely take her home. Slowly, Maya begins to settle down, but the terror inside her won't let her trust anyone anymore. During the drive, Maya secretly slips on the nurse's shoes and quietly grabs the first aid kit as well, believing she might have to make a run for it at any moment. A little later, the nurse pulls over and picks up two men from the side of the road. She tells Maya that they're both her roommates. By now, the situation had become even more uncomfortable. Maya was sitting in the back seat between the two passengers. An eerie silence filled the car, and everyone around her looked suspicious. As her fear kept growing, she slowly started having hallucinations. She imagined that everyone inside the car had transformed into masked killers. Terrified, Maya suddenly jumped out of the moving vehicle and ran deep into the forest. The four people tried to find her, but when they couldn't, they eventually drove away. Now completely alone, Maya wandered through the woods. After some time, she reached a small river. Under the faint glow of the moonlight, she drank some water, caught her breath, and wrapped a bandage around her injured hand. At sunrise, the three masked killers resumed their search for her. They soon discovered a blood-soaked bandage on the ground. Following the trail of footprints, they eventually arrived at an old abandoned bunker. Meanwhile, Maya used a lighter from a first aid kit to start a small fire and keep herself warm. But only a few moments after the flames came to life, strange noises began echoing from the surrounding woods. Panic instantly took over. She was convinced the killers had tracked down her location. Out of fear, she ran once again and hid inside an old abandoned car parked nearby. But she had no idea that her real nightmare was far from over. As Maya hid inside the vehicle, eerie sounds suddenly came from outside. She was so frightened that she barely dared to breathe. Then, in the very next moment, it wasn't a person that appeared, but a wild boar. The animal suddenly charged at her. Maya tried to escape, but the boar slammed into her with tremendous force, knocking her to the ground and severely injuring her leg. Screaming in pain, she somehow grabbed a burning piece of wood lying nearby and struck the animal with it. As soon as the boar backed away, Maya quickly pulled out her knife and plunged it into the creature's chest. After barely surviving the attack, she continued making her way through the forest despite her injured leg. But a short while later, she arrived at a place that sent chills down her spine. It was the same old cabin where her boyfriend had been murdered. The entire area was surrounded by police tape, and a warning seal was still attached to the front door. Maya slowly stepped inside, and painful memories immediately came flooding back. Every corner of the cabin reminded her of that horrifying night. But there was no time to get emotional. If she wanted to survive, she needed food and weapons. In the kitchen, she found a sharp knife. She quickly packed the essential supplies into her bag and prepared to leave. Just then, she heard the sound of footsteps outside. Holding the knife tightly, Maya stepped out and came face to face with a man standing in front of the cabin. He immediately introduced himself, saying his name was Billy and that he was the police officer investigating the case. For the first time, Maya finally sees a glimmer of hope. She begs Billy to get her out of there immediately. The two jump into the car and speed away, believing the nightmare is finally over. But the horror is far from finished. Just a short distance down the road, the killer and the masked girl suddenly appear in the middle of the highway. Panicked, Maya slams on the gas, trying to escape. But out of nowhere, an arrow comes flying through the air and pierces the car's engine. The vehicle instantly dies. Now they're surrounded by nothing but dense forest and death. Luckily, Maya spots a small wooden cabin nearby. She sprints toward it and desperately pounds on the front door. When it opens, she's shocked to find the same man she had previously seen with the nurse. Exhausted and badly injured, Maya collapses and loses consciousness. When she wakes up, she finds herself safely resting in a room. Her wounds have been cleaned and carefully bandaged. For the first time, she believes she might actually survive. She walks into the living room, where the nurse and several other people are gathered. The nurse even returns Maya's lost phone. But after everything she's been through, Maya can no longer trust anyone. In a place this isolated, even a friendly smile could be hiding something sinister. Back in her room, she tries to send a message to her sister, but it fails to go through. At that exact moment, she hears footsteps approaching outside her door. Maya immediately braces herself against it to keep whoever's outside from coming in. But when she turns around, her heart nearly stops. Standing right behind her is the doll-face killer. This time, however, Maya isn't the terrified girl she used to be. She quickly grabs a knife and slashes at the killer before seizing the opportunity to run into the bathroom and lock the door. She desperately tries to escape through the window, only to discover thick iron bars blocking the way. There is no escape. After several tense moments, complete silence fills the house. Gathering every ounce of courage she has left, Maya slowly opens the bathroom door and walks toward the hallway. The sight that greets her is horrifying. The nurse and everyone else have been tied to chairs and brutally murdered. Blood covers the entire room. Just then, an ambulance pulls up outside. Maya believes help has finally arrived and rushes toward it without hesitation. She climbs inside, but the moment she looks into the driver's seat, she lets out a scream. The driver is none other than the mass killer. After witnessing so much death and terror, something inside Maya has changed. She no longer wants to run. She wants to fight. Using her intelligence and waiting for the perfect opportunity, Maya finally manages to kill the mass killer. But suddenly, someone starts smashing the ambulance window from outside. Maya immediately starts the engine and drives away. Then comes another terrifying shock. The mass killer is still alive. She rises from the back of the ambulance and wraps her hands around Maya's throat. A brutal struggle erupts between them, causing Maya to lose control of the vehicle. The ambulance crashes and violently flips over. Sometime later, Maya crawls out of the wreckage, battered and injured. Nearby, the pink mass killer lies completely motionless on the road. Slowly, Maya walks over, hoping to see her face for the very first time. But then she hears the sound of another vehicle approaching. She quickly hides deep inside the woods. Seconds later, the sack mask killer and the dollface killer arrive in a pickup truck. As soon as the sack mask killer removes the pink mask girl's mask, the audience is hit with a shocking revelation. She is the very same girl who was quietly listening to the police officers talking inside the restaurant earlier in the story. That day, she discovered that Maya was still alive. And from that moment on, she began hunting her. The sack mask killer cradles her lifeless body and breaks down in tears. The film then shifts into a dark flashback. As children, the pink mask girl had feelings for the sack mask boy, but he always spent his time playing with a girl named Tamara instead. Bit by bit, jealousy and obsession consumed her. One day, while playing a game of knock and run, Tamara opens her front door expecting to see the sack mask boy. Instead, she finds the pink mask girl standing there. In a chilling voice, she asks, "Is Tamara here?" And in the very next second, she murders Tamara. Blood splashes directly onto the sack mask boy's face. But instead of screaming in fear, both children smile. Then they sit beside Tamara's lifeless body and paint a smiley face using her blood. That twisted moment marks the birth of the two psychopathic killers. From then on, they begin murdering innocent people simply for their own sick pleasure. But once again, Maya has escaped their grasp. And this time, the sack mask killer has completely lost his mind. No matter what it takes, he is determined not to let Maya survive. The story ends on that suspenseful note, teasing that the third installment will be even more terrifying than everything that came before. Subscribe to this channel for the next part.